All members vote or desire to vote? The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 55, noes 15. The measure passes. Moving to file item 61. That's SB 837. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 837 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, enacting the state government making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 837 is our General Government 2 trailer bill. The trailer bill establishes the guidelines and definitions for administration and enforcement for Medical Cannabis Regulatory and Safety Act. As you know, we passed the act last year. In this budget, we actually set up the framework and how best to regulate medical cannabis across the state. We also established tax credits for donations for fresh fruits and vegetables to food banks. We also created the California Emergency Solutions Grant Program, which helps with rapid rehousing of homeless individuals. And we also established the California Seismic Safety Capital Access Loan Program within the state treasury to provide loans for residential and small businesses to do retrofits. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Daly, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I stand in opposition to this bill, and I'm going to speak on SB 839, which is going to come up. There's two bills that have medical marijuana and cannabis cultivation in there. Last year, this House passed SB 88, which was a trailer bill, which regulated water diversions for people who have permits, 1,600 permits, and asked for them to monitor that and send that to the State Resources Control Board if you divert more than 20 acre feet or less. This bill allows cannabis growers to check boxes off, pay $5,000, and divert water without doing a CEQA permit. The hypocrisy of this bill versus SB 88 last year is crazy. The Sierra Club, the League of Conservation Voters, the Center for Biological Diversity should score this bill. Why do medical marijuana growers get to divert water? What about the fish? I can't even believe that this bill's coming through. I strongly urge a no vote, and I ask that they go through the same processes that everybody else has to go through. We're asking agriculture to do it. The people who play by the rules have to get a permit. The people who don't, let me read you a quote. Last year they inspected 200. There was 200 inspections. Of those 200, 162 of them were in violation. That's 90% that required remediation. And we're going to allow up to 50,000 marijuana grows, mostly in Assembly District 2 and Assembly District 1, to divert water without going through a permit. I strongly urge a no vote on this bill, and I would hope that the environmental groups that claim they're environmentalists will score this bill.
All debate having ceased, Mr. Ting, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely respect the comments from my colleague from Bieber. Obviously, this is an industry that is just in the beginnings of being regulated. This sets up the framework for that regulation. I don't think that debate is going to end with this budget trailer bill, and frankly, it shouldn't end in this budget trailer bill. The water issues that my colleague from Bieber mentioned are absolutely paramount and need to be continuously addressed, I believe, in not future budgets, but hopefully in future legislation. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 46, noes 24. The measure passes. Members, we are going to move to file item number 65. File item 65. That's Senate Bill 843. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 843 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, and act relating to public safety, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 843 is our public safety in courts trailer bill. It establishes the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Pilot Program with a $15 million appropriation to experiment with housing first, harm reduction, and to reduce recidivism. It also creates a grant program intended to expand, renovate, or acquire local facilities to help with mental health treatment, substance use disorder treatment, and trauma-centered services. It also requires the Judicial Council to hold a $10 million reserve in the Trial Court Trust Fund. It also eliminates a sunset for the Sergeant Shriver Civil Counsel Act, which provides legal representation to low-income Californians. And lastly, it reduces the preemptory challenges from 10 to 6 until January 1st, 2021, and studies the budgetary effects of this policy. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 47, noes 27. The measure passes. Next up is file item 62. Senate Bill 838. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 838 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, and act relating to transportation, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 838 is our transportation trailer bill. It removes the cap and extends to 2019 the green and white HOV lane sticker program for plug-in hybrids and zero-emission vehicles. It also increases the vehicle registration fee by $10 to recoup costs in the DMV. It also requires the DMV to pilot a new voter reg program process to ensure voters can complete the entire voter registration form in a single step. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Mr. Obernolte, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise in opposition to SB 838. I believe the $10 increase in vehicle registration fees is unwarranted. We collect many fees in the names of transportation from road-going Californians, and we're not spending all that money in the name of transportation until we can look our constituents in the eye and tell them that they're wisely and appropriately spending the money that they're already giving us. I don't believe it's responsible to approve a further tax increase. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no additional discussion or debate on the item, Mr. Ting, you may close if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 838, again, the small fee increase is really there to help recoup ongoing administrative costs. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 27. The measure passes. Members taking up file item 63, Senate Bill 839. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 839 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, and act relating to public resources, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
We're going to pass temporarily on file item 63. Members, we are moving to file item 64. Senate Bill 840. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 840 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, and act relating to energy, making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 840 is our energy trailer bill. The trailer bill helps remove dead trees in our forests by allowing small biomass facilities to bid for power contracts without first having to interconnect to the grid. It also requests the California Council on Science and Technology to study the delivery of biomethane in common carrier pipelines and the impacts on end uses of biomethane. It also allows the state to contract for energy retrofit programs. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 50, noes 24. The measure passes. Members, moving back in the file item 63. Senate Bill 839. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 839 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, and act relating to public resources, making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting, you may again open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 839 is our resources trailer bill. Increases the cap on the total amount of funds received for state administration of the drinking water program. It also asks the Natural Resources Agency to provide a regular reporting on the drought and lessons learned from the drought over the last few years. It also streamlines hazardous waste collection for accurate fees, to accurately recoup fees by the Department of Toxics and Substances Control. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Mr. Obernolte.
Colleagues, I rise in opposition to SB 839. Part of this bill allows the Department of Toxic Substances Control to eliminate the flat fee that they charge businesses to be regulated, and instead opens the potential for unlimited fee increases on those businesses. I submit to you that we already put enough restrictions and regulations on businesses here in California. That's why the California Chamber of Commerce has labeled this particular bill a job killer. In my opinion, in fulfilling our responsibility to our citizens and our businesses in California, that's enough to make it a no vote.
Mr. Gallagher, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members, I want to reiterate the issue here with providing a CEQA exemption for marijuana cultivators when they're getting a stream bed alteration agreement. So about 6 years ago, ranchers in my district who've been diverting for over 100 years with their established water right, Department of Fish and Wildlife came to them and said, you need to get a stream bed alteration agreement. Even though they're not affecting the stream bed. They're having no impact on the stream bed. But they're being told they have to get a permit to the tune of $20,000 or more, and they have to do full CEQA to do that. They sued, and they won at the district court level, but on the appellate court ruled that they had to get those permits, and they have to go through CEQA, and they have to abide by all this. So by passing this bill that provides a CEQA exemption, a checkoff for marijuana cultivators, you're saying that marijuana cultivators who have been illegally diverting, 50,000 cultivators they're estimating, who've been illegally diverting, get better treatment than the ranchers in my district and the gentleman from Bieber and the gentleman from Eureka. Those ranchers it's not equal treatment. It's equal treatment under the law. So how in the world are we going to make a special exemption for those who've been acting illegally while those who've been law-abiding are getting punished? I'd ask you to reconsider this. I ask you to vote no on this if you really care about applying these laws equally. Thank you.
Seeing no additional debate on this trailer bill, Mr. Ting, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With regards to the hazardous waste fee, quite simply, it doesn't really make sense to charge a fee despite the level of pollution. Obviously, we heard quite passionately from my colleague from Los Angeles a number of weeks ago about the Exide battery plant that we've been trying to close for over 20 years. They had a temporary permit because of lax regulation by this department, because of an inability to properly fund this department. They were able to pollute and destroy the environment of a community for over 20 years. All this says is that you should be charged based on the level of your pollution. I don't think we should have a flat fee to charge on the level of pollution. Clean air and clean water is not a luxury. It comes at a cost to make sure that our departments can enforce those regulations on polluters in our state. Respectfully ask your aye vote.
With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 46, noes 26. The measure passes. Mr. Calderon, you are recognized for your procedural motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Assembly Rule 97, I request unanimous consent to re-refer file item 17, SB 944, Committee on Transportation and Housing to the Judiciary Committee.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 77 and Assembly Rule 63 to allow the following bills to be taken up today without reference to file for purpose of concurring in Senate amendments. The bills are AB 1602, AB 1603, AB 1606, and AB 1607.
Ms. Waldron, for what purpose do you rise?
We object and ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Waldron is withholding unanimous consent on the rules suspension. Mr. Calderon moves. Mr. Cooper seconds that the rules be suspended. Members, this is a procedural vote. Clerk will open the roll. Mr. Calderon is asking for an aye vote. Ms. Waldron is asking for a no vote. This requires 41 votes on a rules suspension. Mr. Calderon asking for an aye. Ms. Waldron a no. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 51, noes 25. The rules are suspended. Ms. Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say for clarification of our members, and I'm not sure how your numbers are, but the four bills that just came over from the Senate, the AB bills, on our analysis, they're items 56, 57, 58, and 59. So the bills are the same. They're just numbered as SB. I don't know if it's the same for your...
Thank you, Ms. Waldron, for sharing that piece of information. That is helpful. Members, this is file item 56. Remember, those file items are for your reference. These bills are without reference to file. We will take up AB 1602. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1602 by the Committee on Budget and Act relating to Education, making an appropriation, therefore, to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting, you may open.
Thank you. AB 1602 is our higher education trailer bill. It's back for concurrence from the Senate. As my colleague from San Diego mentioned, it is identical to SB 830. So AB 1602 is identical to SB 830. It creates a strong workforce program for community colleges, provides $200 million in additional funding for career technical education, also provides one-time funding to Cal State University of $35 million to help improve graduation rates, and lastly, it creates a new remedial education program in community colleges to really help entering students with the most basic skills. It also asks UC and CSU to report the costs of instruction based on a national methodology which they have not been using over the last few years. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 59, noes 9. Senate amendments are concurred in. Without reference to file, AB 1603. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1603 by the Committee on Budget and Act relating to Public Social Services, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1603, our Human Services Omnibus Trailer Bill, is back on concurrence from the Senate. It's also identical to SB 831. Our bill repeals the regressive maximum family grant rule in the CalWorks program, aiding over 130,000 children starting on January 1st. It also restores a 7% cut across the board for our in-home support services program. It also has a modest, very modest living increase for our SSI, SSP recipients. It also provides an increase in infant supplement parenting foster youth. It also helps do two things in terms of our homelessness program for the Department of Social Services. In terms of the Bringing Families Home Act program, it also grants to put in more money to affordable housing. It also assists the Housing and Disability Income and Advocacy Program with further counseling as well as affordable housing direction for homeless families. Again, respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. Mr. Obernolte, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, there is much in this trailer bill that is very worthy of support. However, I must rise in opposition. Although we all are incentivized to help the most disadvantaged members of our community, I think we're obligated to do it in such a way where we can continue to fulfill the promises that we make to them in future years. This type of spending that we're committing to in this trailer bill is ongoing spending. It's not one-time dollars that we're spending here. And in fact, just next year in 2017, 2018, this bill will cost over $500 million in general fund money. We're in an era now where the Department of Finance projects that in 3 years we'll have a $4 billion budget deficit. And should an economic recession occur, even a mild one, that budget deficit will swell to over $43 billion. In that kind of environment, we're not going to be able to continue to honor the obligations that we make in this trailer bill, and that's why I must urge a no vote.
See no additional discussion or debate on the item. Mr. Ting, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I completely concur with my colleague from Big Bear in terms of our need to be fiscally responsible. That's why we have a $6 billion reserve. That's why we have a rainy day fund. That's why we're going to keep putting money into our rainy day fund over the next few years. We absolutely don't want any programs that we can't fund in the future, which is why we believe that we put together a budget that's very fiscally responsible while at the same time absolutely fighting poverty and really fighting for families who are the most disadvantaged in our society. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 51, noes 23. The measure passes. Without reference to file, AB 1606. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1606 by the Committee on Budget and Act relating to Developmental Services, making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting, you may again open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1606, our Department of Developmental Services trailer bill is back for concurrence from the Senate. It's also identical to SB 834. It makes clarifying amendments to AB 1 to AB X2-1 from our special session regarding DDS provider rate increases. It also requires DDS to report quarterly to the estimated general fund backfill costs as a result to the loss of federal funds regarding the Sonoma Developmental Center. This is the same developmental center that you heard our colleague from Bakersfield speak so passionately about. There actually is a closure plan in place by the governor's office and the administration. The Sonoma Developmental Center will be closing by 2019, and all of the other developmental centers will be closing by 2021. It also provides rate adjustments for these workers to be in line with our minimum wage increase, which we passed earlier this year. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. Seeing no discussion or debate on the item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 64, noes 10. The measure passes. Senate amendments are concurred in. Without reference to file, AB 1607. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1607 by the Committee on Budget and actually in a Medi-Cal making appropriation therefore declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Mr. Ting, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1607, our hospital quality assurance fee trailer bill, is identical to SB 835. It's back for concurrence from the Senate. It extends the sunset on the hospital quality assurance fee from January 1, 2017 to January 1, 2018, has a general fund savings of approximately $845 million, and is also strongly supported by the hospital industry. Respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. Mr. Obernolte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise in support of this bill. This is an industry-supported fee because it unlocks billions of dollars in federal funding, and every hospital that pays it is more than made whole. There are no losers here, only winners, and that's why I support it. I request an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Obernolte. Seeing no additional discussion or debate on the item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. 2/3 vote on the measure. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 72, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 72, no 0 on the measure. Senate amendments are concurred in.